The bullet grazed Samuel Quincy's shoulder as he dove behind the water trough, his expensive leather satchel splashing into the mud, and he cursed not for the pain, but for the books inside that bag that had traveled with him all the way from Boston. The year was 1876, and Placitas, New Mexico Territory, was supposed to be his fresh start, a place where a man with education could make something of himself teaching the children of ranchers and miners. Instead, he found himself in the middle of a shootout between two drunken cowboys arguing over a card game. Samuel pressed himself against the wooden trough, water seeping through the slats and soaking his vest. His shoulder burned, but the wound was superficial. He had seen worse during his brief time as a field medic in the final days of the war, though he had been barely old enough to hold a scalpel. The shooting stopped as suddenly as it began. The sheriff, a grizzled man named Porter, had knocked both men unconscious with the butt of his rifle. Samuel stood slowly, retrieving his satchel from the mud. Brown water dripped from the leather, and his heart sank as he opened it. 3 books ruined, their pages swollen and ink bleeding. The 4th, a copy of Homer's Odyssey, had survived thanks to being wrapped in an oilcloth. "You all right there, stranger?" Sheriff Porter called out, dragging one of the unconscious men toward the jail. "I will survive," Samuel said, inspecting his shoulder. The bullet had torn his shirt and left a red line across his skin, nothing more. "Though I cannot say the same for my books." "Books," Porter snorted. "You that new school teacher?" "I am." "Well, welcome to Placitas. Sorry about the greeting." Samuel looked around the town properly for the first time. The main street was wide and dusty, lined with false-fronted buildings that promised more grandeur than they delivered. A general store, a saloon, a boarding house, a blacksmith, and at the far end, a small white building with a bell tower that must be the schoolhouse. Mountains rose in the distance, purple and imposing against the afternoon sky. He made his way to the boarding house, a 2-story structure run by a widow named Mrs. Chen, who had come west with the railroad workers and stayed after her husband died in a tunnel collapse. She clucked her tongue at the sight of his torn shirt and insisted on cleaning his wound before showing him to his room. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, a desk, and a chair. A single window looked out onto the street. Samuel unpacked his remaining belongings. 4 more books that had stayed dry, a change of clothes, writing materials, and a framed daguerreotype of his mother, who had died of consumption 3 years ago. His father had passed when Samuel was 12, leaving him in the care of an uncle who had recognized the boy's intelligence and paid for his education. That evening, Samuel walked to the saloon, not for drink but for information. The schoolhouse had been closed for 6 months, he learned, since the last teacher had died of pneumonia. The children had been running wild, and the parents were desperate for someone to take them in hand. He would start teaching on Monday, 3 days away. As he left the saloon, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. A woman emerged from the general store carrying a heavy sack of flour. She was tall and lean, wearing a faded calico dress and a sunbonnet that hid her face. As she struggled with the weight, the sack slipped from her arms and burst open on the boardwalk, white powder exploding into the air. "Damnation," she said, her voice rough with frustration. Samuel hurried over. "Allow me to help." She looked up and he saw her face for the first time. She was perhaps 22 or 23, with strong features, sun-darkened skin, and eyes the color of creek water in summer. There was a hardness to her expression, the look of someone who had known difficult years. "I can manage," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I insist." "It is no trouble." Samuel crouched down and began scooping flour back into what remained of the sack, The woman sighed and joined him. "You are that new teacher. I heard about the shooting. Heard you got yourself shot on your first day. Merely grazed. My pride suffered more than my person." He smiled at her, but she did not return it. Pride will not keep you alive out here. Neither will pessimism. She gave him a sharp look, then something that might have been the ghost of a smile crossed her lips. "Fair enough. I am Hannah Jensen. I run a small ranch about 3 miles north of town, just me and my brother, Samuel Quincy. Pleased to make your acquaintance, Miss Jensen." "Mrs.," she corrected. "I am a widow. I apologize for the presumption." They finished gathering what flour they could salvage. The proprietor of the general store, a round man named Hutchins, came out and surveyed the damage. "That will be another $2 for the replacement, Hannah. I already paid for this one, Tom. And you dropped it. Not my problem." Samuel saw the flash of anger in Hannah's eyes, quickly suppressed. "I will have the money by the end of the month." "End of the month nothing. You already owe me for last month's supplies." "I said I will get you the money." Her voice was tight. Samuel reached into his pocket and withdrew $2 silver. "Please add it to my account, Mr. Hutchins." Hannah turned to him, her face flushed. "I do not need your charity." "It is not charity, it is neighborliness." He met her eyes steadily. Hutchins snatched the coins. "I will get you a new sack, Hannah. You can settle with the teacher however you like." He disappeared into the store. Hannah stood rigid, her jaw clenched. "I will pay you back." "There is no debt between neighbors." "I said I will pay you back." She turned away as Hutchins brought out a new sack of flour. She hoisted it onto her shoulder with practiced ease and walked to a tired-looking horse tied to the hitching post. She secured the flour behind the saddle, mounted, and rode off without another word or backward glance. Samuel watched her go, troubled by the encounter. He had meant well, but clearly his help had not been welcome. Pride, he thought. She had plenty of it, and in a place like this, pride might be all that kept a person going. The schoolhouse was smaller than he had expected. A single room with benches, a pot-bellied stove, and a battered desk. On his first day, 11 children arrived, ranging in age from 6 to 14. They were a rough group, the younger ones squirming in their seats, the older ones regarding him with suspicion. He began with introductions, then moved into a reading lesson, assessing their abilities. Most could barely read at all. 2 of the older boys could manage simple sentences. The youngest could not even recognize letters. Samuel felt the weight of the task before him, but he had always loved teaching, had always believed that education could transform lives. His own life was proof of that. The days fell into a rhythm. He woke early, prepared lessons, taught from 8 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, then spent his evenings reading or preparing for the next day. On Saturdays, he helped Mrs. Chen with repairs around the boarding house, grateful for the opportunity to work with his hands. On Sundays, he attended the small church service led by a circuit preacher when one was available, or simply walked the surrounding countryside, observing the landscape. He saw Hannah Jensen twice more over the next few weeks. Once she rode through town without stopping, her face set in concentration. Another time he saw her in the general store, carefully counting coins for her purchases. Both times he nodded a greeting. Both times she returned the gesture with cool politeness and nothing more. It was late October when everything changed. Samuel was walking back to the boarding house after an evening spent grading slates when he heard a commotion near the livery stable. A horse was rearing, wild-eyed and dangerous, while a boy of perhaps 10 tried desperately to hold the reins. Samuel ran forward, dropping his satchel. He had grown up around horses on his uncle's farm and knew how to handle them. He approached from the side, speaking in a low, steady voice. "Easy now, easy. No one is going to hurt you." The horse's eyes rolled, but Samuel kept talking, kept his movements slow and deliberate. After what felt like an eternity but was probably less than a minute, the horse calmed enough for him to take the reins from the shaking boy. "Thank you, sir," the boy gasped. "He got spooked by a snake." "Where is your family?" "Inside the stable, tending to our other horse. She is foaling." Samuel led the horse in a slow circle, letting it walk off the fear. A man emerged from the stable, saw the situation, and hurried over. "Jacob, what happened?" "Ranger got spooked, Pa. The teacher helped." The man, who introduced himself as William Hart, shook Samuel's hand with genuine gratitude. "My boy could have been killed. I owe you a debt, Mr. Quincy." "No debt. Just glad I was nearby." But William insisted on buying him dinner at the boarding house. And as they ate, Samuel learned that the Hart family had just arrived in Placitas, planning to start a freight business. They had 2 children, Jacob and a daughter named Mary, who would be joining Samuel's class. News of the incident spread through the small town, and Samuel found his status shifting. Before, he had been the odd schoolteacher from back east. Now, he was the man who had saved the Hart boy, who had kept his head in a crisis. People began greeting him on the street, inviting him to meals, asking his opinion on matters both trivial and important. One evening in early November, as the days grew shorter and the air turned crisp, Samuel was in his room reading by lamplight when Mrs. Chen knocked on his door. "Someone to see you, Mr. Quincy. Says it is important." He set down his book and followed her downstairs. In the front parlor stood Hannah Jensen, still wearing her riding clothes, dust on her boots and face. She held her hat in her hands, twisting it nervously. "Mrs. Jensen." "This is a surprise." She lifted her chin. "I need to speak with you, in private if possible." Mrs. Chen discreetly withdrew. Samuel gestured to a chair, but Hannah remained standing. "I will get straight to the point," she said. "I heard what you did for the Hart boy. I heard you are a good teacher, patient and kind, and I heard something else." She paused, seeming to gather courage. "I heard you were a medic during the war, that you saved men's lives." "I assisted the surgeons, yes, though I was young and inexperienced. But you know medicine. You know healing, some, enough to treat common ailments and injuries. Why do you ask?" Hannah's composure cracked slightly. "My brother, he has been sick for weeks. Fever, cough, weakness. I thought it would pass, but it is getting worse. The nearest doctor is in Santa Fe, 3 days' ride, and I cannot leave him that long. I cannot afford to take him there. I have no one else to ask." Samuel did not hesitate. "I will come immediately. Let me gather my supplies." Relief flooded her face. Thank you so much." He packed quickly. Clean bandages, carbolic acid for disinfection, quinine for fever, willow bark, laudanum, and various other remedies he had accumulated. Mrs. Chen provided a basket of food and clean linens without being asked. Bless her heart. They rode north under a sky brilliant with stars. Hannah's ranch was modest, a small house with a barn and a few outbuildings. Chickens scattered as they approached. A thin dog came out to greet them, tail wagging tentatively. Inside, the house was neat but sparse, with handmade furniture and few decorations. A fire burned low in the hearth. Hannah led him to a back bedroom where a young man lay on a narrow bed, his face flushed with fever, his breathing labored. "This is my brother Henry. He is 19. Her voice softened when she spoke of him. Samuel set down his bag and examined the young man. High fever, rapid pulse, crackling sounds in his lungs when he breathed. Pneumonia, most likely. Serious, but treatable if they acted quickly. "I need hot water as much as you can boil. Clean cloths. And I will need to stay here through the night, possibly longer, to monitor his condition." Hannah nodded and hurried to comply. Samuel removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. He had Henry drink willow bark tea for the fever, then applied cool compresses to bring his temperature down. He listened to the young man's chest again, confirming his diagnosis. As the night wore on, Samuel worked steadily. He made Henry inhale steam to loosen the congestion in his lungs. He administered small doses of laudanum to ease the pain and help him rest. He checked his pulse and breathing every hour, making notes of any changes. Hannah brought him coffee and food, which he accepted gratefully. She hovered nearby, her anxiety palpable. "You should rest," Samuel told her. "I will watch over him." "I cannot rest, not while he is like this." "Then sit with me, talk to me, it will help pass the time." She hesitated, then pulled a chair close to the bed, across from where Samuel sat. The lamplight cast soft shadows across her face, and he noticed details he had missed before. The small scar on her chin, the way her hair, freed from its usual braid, curled slightly at the ends. "How long have you been running this ranch alone?" he asked. "3 years. My husband died in a riding accident, broke his neck." She said it flatly, without emotion, but Samuel heard the pain beneath. "We had only been married a year. He left me this ranch in debt, so much debt. I have been trying to pay it off ever since." "That is a heavy burden. Life is heavy." She looked at her brother. "Henry helps when he can, but he is not strong. He was born sickly and he has never quite caught up. He tries, though. He tries so hard. You care for him deeply." "He is all I have left. Our parents died when we came west. Cholera. I was 16, Henry was 12. My husband took us in, gave us a home. After he died, I thought about going back east, but where would we go? This is our home now, such as it is." Samuel checked Henry's fever again. It had dropped slightly, a good sign. "Tell me about the ranch. What do you raise?" "Cattle, mostly. I have about 30 head. I sell them when I can, but the market is unpredictable. I also keep chickens for eggs, a milk cow, a few pigs. We grow vegetables in season. It is enough to survive, barely." "You do all this yourself?" "I hire help sometimes when I can afford it, during roundup, branding, that sort of thing. But day to day it is just me and Henry." She looked at him directly. "You must think I am a fool trying to run a ranch on my own." "I think you are brave." She blinked, surprised. "Brave, courageous, strong, determined. Most people would have given up." "I do not know how to give up. I only know how to keep going." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Samuel checked Henry again, pleased to find his breathing had eased slightly. The crisis had not passed, but the danger seemed less immediate. "Can I ask you something?" Hannah said quietly. "Of course." "Why did you come west? You are clearly educated, well-spoken." "You could have stayed back east, taught at a university or worked in a hospital." Samuel considered his answer carefully. "I wanted a fresh start. I wanted to make a difference somewhere that needed me. Back east, I was just another educated man. Here, I can actually help people, like your brother. Like my students." "You sound like you were running from something," he smiled ruefully. "Perhaps I was. There was a woman back in Boston. I thought we would marry. She thought differently. She wanted someone with better prospects, more money. I realized I did not fit in that world anymore. So I came here." "Her loss," Hannah said simply. They talked through the night, their conversation ranging from childhood memories to dreams for the future, from books to horses to the peculiarities of New Mexico weather. Samuel found himself opening up in ways he rarely did, and Hannah, too, seemed to relax, the hard edge softening from her voice. As dawn broke, painting the sky pink and gold, Henry's fever broke completely. He opened his eyes, weak but lucid, and asked for water. Hannah cried then, tears of relief streaming down her face, and she gripped Samuel's hand with surprising strength. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving him. He is not out of danger yet. He needs rest, good food, and time to recover. But yes, I believe he will be all right." Samuel stayed through the morning, ensuring Henry remained stable. He wrote out detailed instructions for Hannah on how to care for her brother, what to watch for, what remedies to use. When he finally prepared to leave, Hannah walked him outside. The November sun was warm on their faces. The landscape stretched out in all directions, beautiful and harsh. Samuel breathed in the clean air, feeling tired but satisfied. "I meant what I said," Hannah told him. "I will pay you back for the flower and for this. There is no need. There is every need. I do not take charity." He studied her stubborn face and had an idea. "All right. If you insist on payment, then pay me with work. I need help repairing the schoolhouse roof. It leaks when it rains. Assist me with that and we will call it even." She frowned. "That hardly seems fair. What you did is worth far more than a day's labor. Take it or leave it." After a moment, she extended her hand. "Deal. When do you need me?" "Next Saturday, if Henry is well enough to be left alone." They shook on it, her hand rough and calloused in his, but her grip firm and honest. That week, Samuel found his thoughts returning frequently to Hannah. He remembered the way the lamplight had softened her features, the warmth in her voice when she spoke of her brother, the strength and vulnerability he had glimpsed. He told himself it was simple admiration for a hard-working woman, nothing more. Saturday arrived with clear skies and a cool breeze. Samuel gathered tools and lumber from the town's general store, which Hutchins provided at a fair price, clearly having revised his opinion of the teacher. Hannah arrived at noon on horseback, dressed in practical work clothes, her hair in a tight braid. "Henry is much improved," she reported. "Sitting up, eating, complaining about being bored, all good signs." They climbed onto the schoolhouse roof and got to work. Hannah proved to be skilled with hammer and nails, her movements efficient and sure. They worked in companionable silence, broken occasionally by requests for tools or observations about the work. "You are good at this," Samuel said, impressed by her speed and precision. "I have had to learn many things to keep the ranch running. Carpentry, blacksmithing, basic veterinary work, whatever was needed. Do you ever wish things were different, that life was easier?" She paused in her hammering, considering. "Sometimes, but wishing does not change anything. You work with what you have." They finished the repairs as the sun began to set. Standing on the roof, they could see most of Placitas spread below them, smoke rising from chimneys, people moving about their evening business. "It is a good town," Samuel said. "Small but good." "You plan to stay then?" "I do. I have found something here I was missing back east, purpose, I suppose, a sense of belonging." Hannah looked at him, something unreadable in her expression. "I am glad. The children need a good teacher, the town needs good people." They climbed down from the roof, and Samuel insisted on making her dinner as further thanks for her help. They went to the boarding house, where Mrs. Chen greeted them with knowing smiles and prepared a hearty meal of beef stew and fresh bread. Over dinner, their conversation flowed easily. Hannah talked about her dreams of expanding the ranch, of breeding better cattle, of building a more stable life for Henry. Samuel shared his hopes for the school, for improving literacy in the territory, for making real change in his students' lives. "You really believe education can change the world?" Hannah asked. "I believe it can change individual lives, and enough changed lives can change the world. Every child who learns to read and write and think critically has opportunities they would not have had otherwise." She was quiet for a moment, pushing food around her plate. Then very quietly she said, "I cannot read." Samuel looked up, surprised. "What?" Her face was flushed, her eyes fixed on her plate. "I cannot read, not more than a few words. Numbers I can manage, I have to for the ranch accounts. But reading, writing, anything beyond the basics I never learned. My parents could not read either. They never saw the value in it. and after they died, I was too busy surviving to think about learning." She looked up at him, her expression defiant and ashamed at once. "Go ahead and judge me. Everyone else does. Ignorant ranch woman too stupid to even raid." "I would never judge you for that." Samuel kept his voice gentle. "The lack of education is not a reflection of intelligence. It is merely a lack of opportunity. It is a weakness. It is why Hutchins and others cheat me. They know I cannot read contracts properly. They know I cannot check their figures. They take advantage." Samuel felt a surge of anger on her behalf, but he kept his voice calm. "Then we will fix it. I will teach you to raid." She stared at him. "What? I will teach you. If you want to learn, I will teach you." "I am too old to learn. I am 23, you teach children. You are never too old to learn. And you are clearly intelligent and capable. You run a ranch, manage accounts, do the work of 3 people. Learning to read will be simple by comparison." Hope flickered in her eyes, quickly suppressed. "I could not pay you. I do not want payment, I want to help. Consider it my contribution to your success." She shook her head slowly. "Why would you do this for me? You barely know me." Samuel met her eyes steadily. "Because I believe everyone deserves the chance to learn. Because I admire your determination and want to help you succeed. And because I consider you a friend." The word hung in the air between them. Friend, such a simple word but loaded with meaning. Finally, Hannah nodded. "All right. Yes. I want to learn. Teach me to read." They began the very next evening. Hannah rode into town after finishing her ranch work, arriving at the boarding house dusty and tired but determined. Mrs. Chen provided them with a private parlor and endless cups of coffee. Samuel started with the basics, the alphabet, the sounds letters made, simple words. Hannah proved to be a quick study, her focus intense. She attacked learning with the same determination she brought to everything else, refusing to move on until she had mastered each lesson. "Cat," she read slowly, sounding out the letters. "Cat, dog, hat, rat. Excellent, now try these." Samuel wrote out more words. They met 3 evenings a week, sometimes 4 when the ranch work allowed. Samuel marveled at her progress. Within a month, she could read simple sentences. Within 2 months, she was tackling short paragraphs, her finger following the words as she concentrated fiercely. One evening in late January, as snow fell softly outside the windows, Hannah successfully read an entire page from one of Samuel's books. When she finished, she looked up at him with such joy that his breath caught. "I did it. I actually read a whole page." "You did. I am so proud of you," she laughed, a sound of pure delight that he had never heard from her before. "I cannot believe it. I never thought I would be able to do this." "Never." Without thinking, Samuel reached across the table and took her hand. "You can do anything you set your mind to, Hannah Jensen. Anything at all." She looked down at their joined hands, and something shifted in the air between them. The comfortable friendship they had built over months of lessons suddenly felt charged with new possibility. Hannah's cheeks flushed, and she gently withdrew her hand. "It is late. I should get back to the ranch, of course. But Hannah, I meant what I said." She smiled, soft and genuine. "I know you did. Thank you, Samuel, for everything." After she left, Samuel sat alone in the parlor, staring at the hand that had held hers, feeling the warmth that lingered. He was falling in love with her. The realization came not as a shock, but as a recognition of something he had been denying for weeks. He loved her strength, her determination, her fierce independence. He loved the way her face softened when she smiled, the way she bit her lip when concentrating on a difficult word, the way she threw herself completely into everything she did. But did she feel the same? He could not tell. She was friendly, warm even, but she kept a certain distance, a wall he could not quite scale. Perhaps she still mourned her husband. Perhaps she simply was not interested. Samuel resolved to say nothing, to continue as her teacher and friend, and not risk the relationship they had built. Winter deepened, bringing snow and cold winds. Henry recovered fully and took over more of the ranch work, allowing Hannah more time for her lessons. She progressed rapidly, moving from simple stories to more complex texts. Samuel loaned her his copy of the Odyssey, and she devoured it, asking questions about the characters and themes, her insights often surprising him with their depth. "It is strange," she said one evening in February, "how stories can make you feel less alone. When I read about Odysseus struggling to get home, fighting against impossible odds, I feel like someone understands, like my struggles matter too." That is the power of literature. It connects us across time and distance, reminds us we are all human, all struggling with similar questions and fears. She looked at him with those creek water eyes. "You really love teaching, do not you?" "I do. Almost as much as I love seeing a student succeed. Like you." "I am not your student anymore, not really. I think we have moved beyond that." "What are we then?" Hannah hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Friends, good friends, maybe something more, but I do not know what to call it." Samuel's heart raced. "Hannah, I need to tell you something." Before he could continue, the door burst open and Jacob Hart rushed in, his face panicked. "Mr. Quincy, come quick. There has been an accident at the livery." Samuel and Hannah ran out into the snowy night. At the livery stable, they found William Hart trapped beneath a fallen beam, his leg bent at an unnatural angle. Several men were trying to lift the beam, but it was too heavy. "Everyone together," Samuel directed. "On my count. 1, 2, 3, lift." The beam rose just enough for them to pull William free. His leg was clearly broken, the bone visible through torn flesh. Samuel felt Hannah beside him, steady and calm despite the blood. "Get me the medical supplies from the boarding house," he told her. "And bring whiskey, a lot of whiskey." She ran off without question. Samuel knelt beside William, assessing the damage. It was bad, but not hopeless. He had set broken bones before, though nothing this severe. Hannah returned with his medical bag and a bottle of whiskey. Samuel made William drink heavily, waiting for the alcohol to dull the pain. Then, with Hannah holding William still and several men helping, Samuel set about cleaning the wound and setting the bone. It was gruesome work, and William screamed despite the whiskey, but Samuel kept his hands steady. Finally, the bone was set and splinted. Samuel stitched the torn flesh with careful precision, bandaged the leg, and sat back exhausted. William had passed out from the pain and whiskey, which was probably for the best. "Will he keep the leg?" Hannah asked quietly. "I believe so, if infection does not set in. We will need to watch him carefully." They moved William to his home, where his wife Sarah wept with relief and fear. Samuel left detailed instructions for his care, promising to check on him daily. It was past midnight when he and Hannah finally walked back to the boarding house. "You were amazing," Hannah said. "The way you took charge, the way you saved him. You are a healer, Samuel. That is your true calling. Teaching is my calling. Maybe you can do both." They stopped outside the boarding house. Snow continued to fall, covering the world in white silence. Hannah looked up at him, her face pale in the moonlight. "Earlier, you said you needed to tell me something. What was it?" Samuel's courage failed him. "Just that I am glad we are friends." She studied his face, and he had the uncomfortable feeling she could see right through him. "Is that really all?" "Yes, that is all." Hannah nodded slowly. "All right then. Good night, Samuel." She mounted her horse and rode away into the snowy darkness. Samuel stood watching until she disappeared, cursing himself for a coward. Spring arrived gradually, the snow melting to reveal the brown earth beneath. William Hart's leg healed slowly but well, and Samuel's reputation as a healer grew. People began coming to him with ailments and injuries, seeking his help. He treated them all, refusing payment but accepting the occasional gift of food or supplies. His students flourished under his teaching. Even the most resistant learners made progress, and the younger children blossomed. The town council approached him about starting a small library, and Samuel threw himself into the project with enthusiasm. Through it all, Hannah continued her lessons, though she hardly needed them anymore. She could read anything Samuel gave her, and her writing had improved remarkably. Yet she kept coming, 3 evenings a week, regular as clockwork. They read together, discussed books, talked about everything and nothing. The tension between them grew. Samuel caught her watching him sometimes, her expression unreadable. Once, their hands brushed while reaching for the same book, and the contact sent electricity through him. She pulled away quickly, but not before he saw something in her eyes that might have been answering desire. In April, a letter arrived for Hannah at the general store. Hutchins gave it to Samuel to pass along, and Samuel saw it was from a law office in Santa Fe. He delivered it to the ranch that evening, finding Hannah in the barn tending to a newborn calf. "A letter for you. Looks official." She wiped her hands on her apron and took the envelope, staring at it nervously. "Will you read it to me? I mean, I can read it myself now, but legal language is still difficult." "Of course." They went to the house, and Hannah opened the envelope with shaking hands. Samuel read the letter aloud. It was from a lawyer representing her late husband's family back in Missouri. They were contesting the will, claiming the ranch should have gone to them, not to Hannah. They were demanding she either pay them a substantial sum for their claim or surrender the property. Hannah's face went white. "They cannot do this. The ranch is mine. Thomas left it to me." Samuel read the letter again, more carefully. "They are claiming that because you and Thomas were only married a year, and because the ranch belonged to his family originally, that you have no legitimate claim. It is a weak argument legally, but it could still tie you up in court for months or years. I cannot afford a lawyer. I can barely afford to keep this place running." "How much are they demanding?" $500. It was a fortune, more money than Hannah likely saw in 3 years. Samuel's mind raced. "This is extortion. They are betting you cannot fight them. They are right. I cannot." Hannah sank into a chair, her face in her hands. "I will lose everything. The ranch, my home, everything I have worked for." Samuel knelt beside her chair. "We will find a way. I promise you we will find a way." She looked at him, tears streaking her face. "How? Even if I sold every cow, every chicken, everything I own, I could not raise that much money." An idea formed in Samuel's mind, reckless and impulsive. "Marry me." Hannah stared at him. "What? Marry me?" "If we are married, the ranch becomes community property. Their claim becomes even weaker. And I have some money saved, not $500, but enough to hire a lawyer to fight this properly." "Samuel, that is insane." "Is it? We are friends. We care about each other. We could make it work." "You deserve better than a marriage of convenience to save my ranch." "What if it is not just convenience? What if I have been in love with you for months and was just too afraid to say it?" The words hung in the air between them. Hannah's tears stopped, her eyes wide with shock. "You love me." "I do. I love your strength and your determination. I love the way you never give up, no matter how hard things get. I love the way you bite your lip when you are concentrating. I love the sound of your laugh, which I do not hear nearly often enough. I love everything about you, Hannah Jensen, and if you will have me, I would be honored to be your husband, not just to save the ranch, but because I cannot imagine my life without you in it." Hannah stood abruptly, pacing the room. "This is too much, too fast. I do not know what to say." "Say yes. Or say no, but do not say nothing." She stopped pacing and turned to face him. "I care about you, Samuel, more than I thought I could care about anyone after Thomas died, but I do not know if I love you. I do not know if I can love anyone that way again. I am not asking you to love me right now. I am asking you to give us a chance. Marry me and let us see where it leads. And if it leads nowhere, if I cannot give you what you need, then we will face that if it comes. But I would rather try and fail than never try at all. Hannah closed her eyes, thinking. Samuel waited, his heart pounding. Finally, she opened her eyes and looked at him directly. Yes, I will marry you, but on one condition. Name it. If you ever regret this, if you ever feel trapped or unhappy, you have to tell me. Promise me you will be honest. I promise. And I want the same from you. She nodded slowly. All right then. Let us do this. They were married a week later by the circuit preacher, with Mrs. Chen and William Hart standing as witnesses. Hannah wore a simple dress of blue cotton and Samuel wore his best suit. The ceremony was short and practical, much like Hannah herself. When the preacher told Samuel to kiss his bride, he leaned in hesitantly, and Hannah met him halfway. Their lips touched briefly, a promise of things to come. That night, Samuel moved his belongings to the ranch. Hannah had prepared the main bedroom for them, fresh sheets on the bed, wildflowers in a vase on the dresser. They stood in the doorway, suddenly awkward with each other. I can sleep in the barn, Samuel offered, or with Henry. We do not have to rush anything. Hannah took his hand. We are married. We should at least try to act like it. She paused. I am sorry I cannot promise you love, not yet. You are here. That is enough. They lay in bed that night, careful not to touch, both staring at the ceiling. After a long while, Hannah spoke into the darkness. Tell me a story. Like the ones in your books. So Samuel told her about Perseus and Medusa, about Theseus and the Minotaur, about heroes and monsters and impossible quests. As he talked, Hannah gradually moved closer until her head rested on his shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her, and she did not pull away. I am glad you came to Placitas, she whispered. So am I. The next day, Samuel used his savings to hire a lawyer from Santa Fe, a sharp-eyed woman named Margaret Ross who specialized in property disputes. She reviewed Hannah's case and agreed to take it on, confident they could win. The claim is weak, she said, but these things take time. Months, possibly. Can you manage that long? We will manage, Samuel said, squeezing Hannah's hand. Life on the ranch was harder than Samuel had anticipated. He continued teaching during the day, but evenings and weekends were filled with ranch work. He learned to mend fences, herd cattle, slaughter chickens, and 100 other tasks he had never imagined doing. His hands, once smooth and uncalloused, grew rough. His back ached, but he did not complain. This was Hannah's life, and now it was his too. Henry, initially wary of his new brother-in-law, gradually warmed to him. The two men worked side by side, and Samuel discovered he enjoyed the physical labor, the sense of accomplishment it brought. He understood now why Hannah took such pride in her ranch. It was something tangible, built with her own hands and will. At night, Samuel and Hannah lay together, talking about their days, their hopes, their fears. They grew comfortable with each other's presence, learning each other's rhythms and habits. Sometimes Samuel would read aloud while Hannah mended clothes or worked on the ranch accounts. Sometimes they would just sit in silence, finding peace in each other's company. One evening in May, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky purple and orange, Hannah spoke suddenly. I think I am falling in love with you. Samuel turned to her, hardly daring to believe. You think? She smiled, that rare, genuine smile he treasured. I am falling in love with you. I did not think it was possible. I thought that part of me died with Thomas, but you have shown me it is still there, still capable of feeling. Hannah, he breathed her name like a prayer. She took his face in her work-roughened hands. I love how patient you are. I love how you never made me feel stupid or weak. I love how you threw your whole life into helping me save this ranch. I love coming home and knowing you will be here. I love you, Samuel Quincy." He kissed her then, properly this time, not the chaste kiss of their wedding but something deeper and more passionate. She responded in kind, her arms wrapping around his neck, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "I have loved you since the first night we spent together, taking care of Henry," Samuel confessed. "When you sat with me by lamplight, talking about your life, your dreams. I think I fell in love with you in that moment and have been falling ever since." They made love that night for the first time, tentatively at first, then with growing passion and confidence. Afterward, Hannah lay in Samuel's arms, her head on his chest, and Samuel felt a contentment he had never known before. This was home. This was where he belonged. Summer brought hard work and long days. The ranch prospered under their combined efforts. Samuel's teaching income, though modest, helped supplement what the ranch brought in. Margaret Ross sent regular updates on the legal case, which was proceeding slowly but in their favor. In July, Hannah discovered she was pregnant. They celebrated quietly, just the two of them under the stars, talking about names and nurseries and the future. Samuel felt a profound sense of wonder at the idea of becoming a father. Hannah glowed with happiness, her hand constantly resting on her still flat belly. "A boy or a girl," she mused. "What do you hope for?" "Healthy, that is all I hope for. But if you could choose," Samuel considered. "A boy, I think. A son to help on the ranch, to teach and guide." "I was hoping for a girl," Hannah admitted. "Someone I could teach everything I know about surviving in this world. Then let us hope for twins." She laughed and swatted his arm. "One at a time, thank you very much." In August, Margaret Ross sent word that the case had been settled. The Missouri family had agreed to drop their claim in exchange for a token payment of $50. The ranch was indisputably Hannah's, now theirs. They celebrated with a party at the ranch, inviting half the town. Mrs. Chen brought Chinese dumplings. The Harts brought pie. The sheriff brought whiskey. The schoolchildren, whom Samuel had invited, ran wild through the property, and for one perfect evening everything was joy. That night, lying in bed, Hannah said, "This is the happiest I have ever been. I did not think life could be this good." "It will get better still," Samuel promised. "We are just beginning." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Hannah worked as long as she could, only reluctantly agreeing to lighter duties as her belly swelled. Samuel took over more of the physical labor, helped by Henry and hired hands they could now afford. The school year ended and began again. Samuel's students continued to thrive, and he felt a deep satisfaction in their progress. In late February of 1878, during a cold snap that frosted the windows and made the wood stove work overtime, Hannah went into labor. Samuel sent Henry racing to town for Mrs. Chen, who had delivered half the babies in the territory. The hours that followed were the longest of Samuel's life. He held Hannah's hand, wiped her brow, whispered encouragement, and tried not to show his fear. Finally, as dawn broke, a baby's cry filled the house. Mrs. Chen held up a squalling, red-faced infant. A boy, a healthy, strong boy. Samuel felt tears streaming down his face as he looked at his son. Hannah, exhausted but radiant, reached for the baby. Mrs. Chen placed him in her arms, and Hannah gazed at their child with wonder. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." They named him Thomas Henry Quincy, honoring both Hannah's late husband and her brother. Little Tommy, as they quickly began calling him, had Hannah's eyes and Samuel's dark hair. He was healthy and loud and perfect. Fatherhood transformed Samuel in ways he had not expected. He discovered reserves of patience he had not known he possessed. He learned to function on little sleep, to change diapers, to soothe a crying infant in the middle of the night. Hannah marveled at his dedication, teasing him that he was better with babies than with cattle. "You are a natural," she said one evening, watching him rock Tommy to sleep. "I am terrified," he admitted. "Every moment I am terrified I will do something wrong." "That just means you care. You are going to be a wonderful father." As Tommy grew, the ranch continued to prosper. They expanded the herd, improved the house, hired permanent help. Samuel's school flourished, gaining recognition throughout the territory for its high standards. The library he had championed opened to great fanfare, stocked with books he had personally selected and fought to acquire. Life settled into a rhythm of work and family, challenges and triumphs. Hannah and Samuel grew together, their love deepening with each passing season. They had their disagreements, of course, their moments of tension and frustration. But they always talked through their problems, remembering the foundation of honesty they had built. When Tommy was 2, Hannah became pregnant again. This time, she carried twins, a fact that delighted and terrified them both. The pregnancy was harder, her body struggling with the double burden. Samuel cut back on his teaching hours to help more at home, and Mrs. Chen practically moved into the ranch during the final months. The twins arrived in May of 1880, a boy and a girl born within minutes of each other. The boy they named Samuel Jr., though they called him Sam. The girl they named Charlotte, after Samuel's mother. Both babies were small but healthy, and suddenly the house was filled with noise and chaos and love. Henry, now 23, met a girl from a neighboring ranch and began courting her seriously. Samuel and Hannah encouraged the relationship, happy to see Henry finding love of his own. When Henry married that autumn, it was at the ranch, a joyous celebration that brought the whole community together. The years passed in a blur of activity. Tommy started attending his father's school, proving to be a quick learner with a love of books. The twins grew from babies to toddlers to rambunctious children. The ranch expanded, becoming one of the most successful in the territory. Samuel's reputation as both teacher and healer continued to grow, and he found himself serving on the town council, helping shape Placitas's future. Through it all, Hannah remained his anchor, his partner in everything. They made decisions together, raised their children together, built their life together. Samuel never regretted his impulsive proposal, never doubted that marrying Hannah had been the best decision of his life. One evening in the spring of 1885, Samuel and Hannah sat on their porch watching the sunset, much as they had done 7 years earlier when Hannah had first said she loved him. Tommy was inside reading to his younger siblings, a scene that filled Samuel with pride. The ranch stretched out before them, prosperous and beautiful. "You remember the night we met?" Hannah asked. "When I dropped that flower, how could I forget? You looked at me like I was the most annoying person alive." She laughed. "You were annoying, so proper and educated and helpful. I hated that I needed help. And now I am grateful for every moment that led me to you, even the hard ones, especially the hard ones because they brought us here." Samuel took her hand, still calloused from ranch work but precious to him. "Do you remember when you asked me to teach you to read? That night, sitting by lamplight with you, starting those first lessons, I knew my life was changing. I just did not know how profoundly." "I was so scared," Hannah admitted. "Scared of being vulnerable, of showing you my weakness. But you made me feel safe. You always make me feel safe. You have never been weak a day in your life. I was weak when I met you. I was drowning, barely keeping my head above water. You threw me a rope." "We saved each other," Samuel corrected. "You gave me purpose, a reason to put down roots. You gave me a home." They sat in comfortable silence, fingers intertwined, watching the sky fade from orange to purple to deep blue. Stars began to appear, one by one, brilliant in the clear desert air. "I love you," Hannah said, as she had said countless times over the years. But somehow, the words never grew old or lost their power. "I love you too," Samuel replied. "Always and forever." From inside the house came the sound of children laughing, of life continuing. Tommy was doing voices for the different characters in whatever story he was reading, making the twins giggle. It was the sound of happiness, of family, of everything they had built together. Samuel thought back to the day he had arrived in Placitas, bleeding from a gunshot wound, his books ruined, alone and uncertain. He thought about the chain of events that had led him to this moment. The shootout, the flower, the late-night call to help Henry, the reading lessons by Lamplight, the impulsive proposal, the years of work and love and growth. Every hardship had been worth it. Every challenge overcome had made them stronger. They had taken two separate lives marked by loss and struggle and woven them together into something beautiful and enduring. Hannah leaned her head on his shoulder, and Samuel wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. In the distance, coyotes began their evening song. A cool breeze carried the scent of sage and wildflowers. The moment was perfect in its simplicity. "Tell me a story," Hannah murmured, echoing the words she had spoken on their wedding night. So Samuel began to speak, weaving a tale of adventure and love, of heroes overcoming impossible odds, of happily ever after. As he talked, Hannah's breathing slowed, and he realized she had fallen asleep, trusting and content in his arms. He stopped talking and simply held her, looking out at the land they had worked so hard to keep, the home they had built, the life they shared. In the morning, there would be work to do, children to raise, challenges to face. But for now, in this moment, everything was peace. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient dance. Somewhere in the house, the children settled into sleep. The ranch animals bedded down for the night. And Samuel and Hannah sat together on their porch, two people who had found each other in the wilderness of the American West, who had learned to read not just words on a page but each other's hearts, who had built something lasting and true from the raw materials of hardship and hope. Years later, when Tommy was grown with children of his own, when Sam and Charlotte had gone off to make their own ways in the world, when Samuel's hair had gone silver and Hannah's face bore the lines of a life well lived, they would still sit on that porch together, watching the sunset, holding hands, grateful for every moment they had been given. The story of how an educated cowboy had fallen in love by lamplight, while teaching a rancher's widow to read, became something of a legend in Placitas. Parents told it to their children, who told it to their children, a reminder that love could bloom in the most unexpected places, that education and determination could change lives, that the greatest adventures sometimes began with the simplest question. "Can you teach me to read?" she had asked. And in teaching her, he had found not just a student but a partner, not just a friend but a soulmate, not just a purpose but a home. They had saved each other, taught each other, loved each other through everything life threw at them. And in the end, that was more than enough. It was everything. The lamplight that had illuminated their first lessons together had grown into a fire that warmed them through all their days, a beacon that guided them through darkness, a light that would never go out. Their love was written in the land they tended, in the children they raised, in the community they served. In every word Hannah learned to read, and every lesson Samuel learned about life beyond books. As the night deepened and the stars shone brighter, Samuel finally carried his sleeping wife inside, tucked her into bed, and lay down beside her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and joys, as every tomorrow did. But tonight, They rested in the certainty of their love, in the home they had made, in the story they had written together. And it was a story with a happy ending, the kind that lasts forever, the kind worth telling and retelling, the kind that reminds us all that love, when true and deep and fought for, can conquer anything. In the wild territory of New Mexico, in the small town of Placitas, in a ranch house that had witnessed so much struggle and triumph, that love lived on, bright and warm and eternal as the stars themselves.